Welcome to the Masterclass. Today we're talking subplots, those mysterious undercurrents that run under your main story. There could be 1, 2, 3, 5, and if you're working in television, there could be a lot more. What sort of subplots are there? What do you need to keep in mind as you're writing them? This and many other things we'll cover in today's class. Welcome. To tell one story. Very different from novel storytelling. We need to stick to our main plot, and that's where subplots sometimes tend to give the sense of losing the focus and losing the interest in our main character. Many screenplays I've read by beginning screenwriters have this issue where in the second act a subplot takes over, and then that subplot seems to become the main plot, and that's something that we need to be mindful of. You can't really do that. Most of the time, the main character is still present when the subplot unfolds, so it doesn't mean that we need to cut away from that main character. We can have subplots that unfold entirely in the presence of our main character, only there is another story at play at that particular point in time. I'm going to give you a very simple example from Jaws. Jaws, as you know, is a story of a sheriff dealing with a shark attack in his town, and he needs to protect and serve the people and making sure there's no further casualties. From the title and from memory, you may think that the main opponent is the shark, but that's not entirely the case. As is often with horror movies or monster movies, there is conflict within the house, so not just external. And here's a very short clip that gives you an indication of one of those lines of conflict, and this is the first scene where we become aware of that additional obstacle for our main character.
Martin, you gonna shut down the beaches on your own authority?
Well, what other authority do I need?
Technically, you need a civic ordinance or a resolution by a board of selectmen.
That's just going by the book. We're really a little anxious that you're rushing into something serious here. It's your first summer, you know.
What does that mean?
I'm only trying to say that Amity is a summer town. We need summer dollars.
There we go, conflict set up with the mayor. It's pouring down here. I don't know whether you hear it. You will hear it on the recording. Different microphones. And we'll have this for another week, apparently, here in Sydney. From Spielberg to Spielberg, from Jaws to Saving Private Ryan. Saving Private Ryan is the story of finding this private whose brothers have died in action, and to avoid that the parents would lose the third son. Now, parallel to this, there is the story of this writer/interpreter who joins the team led by the character played by Tom Hanks, and he will provide one of the themes running through the film, and this is the scene in which he is drawn into the story. So you could argue this is his first act. This is where his character enters the first act of this subplot. And the moment he's asked to join, that is the inciting incident, if you wish, or the call to adventure, when he accepts, that's the end of Act 1. And then later I'll show you clips from the Act 2 of this subplot, and then we'll also have the finale, the third act.
I need someone who speaks French and German.
Yes, sir.
My 2 guys were killed.
Yes, sir. It's just that I haven't held a weapon since basic training, sir.
Did you fire the weapon in basic training?
Yes, sir.
Well, then get your gear.
Yes, sir. Sir, may I bring... May I bring my typewriter, sir?
The moment he says yes, he accepts the call, he accepts the adventure. That's the end of Act 1. And we'll have a threshold scene in a minute. The different types of subplots, and if you check the literature on this, there's not a hell of a lot, and most people say the same thing. Ray Frensham in Teach Yourself Screenwriting lists 4 subplots, and then I went to Robert McKee, and it turns out Robert McKee said the same a little bit before Ray Frensham. Don't know what that means. In any case, The first type of subplot would be a story that contradicts the main story. That could be thematically, could also provide conflict to that main story. It could be complementary, could be reinforce the idea of the main story. It could provide a setup that leads us into the main plot. And then finally, it could provide complications. And it's, I guess that's one of the most common ones. As an example, the love story is often a complication to the main plot. Back to Saving Private Ryan, our hero has now accepted the subplot mission, and we're going on the threshold. We're moving into the special world. And as he is stepping with his platoon mates, we see conflict, because each subplot, no matter what the function, still needs to provide conflict.
Arzo? Is it,
Hey, drop dead, Corporal.
Gotcha.
And another thing, every time you salute the captain, you make him a target for the Germans. So do us a favor, don't do it. Especially when I'm standing next to him, capiche?
Hey, capiche.
So very, very short, but it indicates that there is conflict going on. And that will be it also indicates his not being ready, not being suited, not being equipped for this particular journey. And that will run throughout his subplot, and it will only get stronger. And if this is the beginning of the second act of this subplot, the next clip that you'll get to see is going to be the end of Act 2, when this character reaches his lowest point. Different sorts of uses of subplot. It can show parallel action. What is going on at the same time? Very often when you have crime stories, at the beginning of an act or a sequence, we cut away from the main character to see what's happening at the end of the shadow, the villain. And that then amps up the tension. So it fulfills two actions there. I guess it shows that parallel action, it amps up the tension at the same time. Revealing subtext could be one of the functions. Showing more about a character, that could be both a character aspect in terms of the psychology, could also be background, backstory, or sociology. In terms of backstory, we can have a whole plot playing in the past, and that's when you have subplots that are entire stories playing out in the past. You can surprise an audience with your subplots. You can delay story progress. Why would you do that? Well, sometimes you need to reveal information, but you can't really do it sequentially at this particular point in time. So you then cut away to kind of delay that reveal. And one of the films and scripts that you may have read as part of the immersion screenwriting course is in Bruges, where this happens. The inciting incident of the main story happens very late in the story. And in order to make that still work, we have a subplot starting earlier. And I'll show you a clip later in the class. Subplots can introduce characters. Remember Charlie Wilson's War, when we cut away from the main story with Tom Hanks' character of Charlie Wilson to the new character of Gus Avocados, and he has his own little story going on there that continues throughout. Subplots can reveal backstory, I mentioned that. It can also provide context or setting. Last week we had a few clips from Malcolm and Marie. YouTube didn't like that. They sent me a warning because I repeatedly ignored their warnings. Apparently during our class we had a live stream going, which I wasn't monitoring, and as a result of these repeated clips, I received a warning. So the clips are going to be shorter now, and I'm not live streaming at the same time, but it's just to avoid having to dispute all their warnings. We're going back to Malcolm and Marie, and you may remember the story is about this couple whose relationship is on the rocks as a result of the mistake the director Malcolm made when he presented his film to an audience during the premiere, and he didn't thank his girlfriend, who was a big part of the production. So that's really the spine of the film. That's the main story. Earlier in the film, there's a rant. He's walking around his lounge room or dining room, and he's ranting about critics. That is a setup for a subplot that will take further meaning later in the story. I'll show you a very short clip of that.
The white guy from Variety loved it. The white guy from IndieWire loved it. The white woman from the LA Times, she really loved it. She kept saying that I'm the next Spike Lee, the next Barry Jenkins, the next John Singleton. And I just looked at her and was like, what about William Wyler? You could tell for like 3 whole seconds. She was like, was William Wyler black? Shaw. And then she realized, oh, shit, that's racist too.
So here in Malcolm and Marie, although it's a very simple linear story in the same location about that one night, in the conversation we still veer off on tangents, and this is one of them where he talks about his relationship with the critics and one reviewer in particular. I mentioned Robert McKee. On his website, he talks, in a short video, he talks briefly about what he considers to be the various functions of the subplot. And he also mentions one function that he omitted in his book. And it's an important one, and one that he seems to ultimately like.
This subplot also may have a thematic relationship. It may be a variation on the controlling idea of the central plot. It might be used to set up the introduction of the central plot. It certainly might create other forces of antagonism to complicate the central plot. I've listed in my lectures in the book at least 4 different ways in which subplots relate to the central plot. But one way one purpose that I've not put into the book in the lecture yet is to accelerate pace. And so you might develop a subplot simply in order to eliminate through cross-cutting all the dead moments in the central plot, and build the progressions of the film overall. That is a very effective use of subplots.
We're going to Little Miss Sunshine, which is a film packed with subplots. Every character has their own journey. We have 2 main plots, if you wish, one with Olive and one with Richard. Richard's main plot is very much also about the theme. So you could say, depending on your definition of main plot and subplot, you could take either Richard or Olive's as the main plot. If you consider Little Miss Sunshine being that film where they go to Redondo Beach for the pageant, then that's the main plot, then that's Olive's story. And then Richard's story becomes the subplot, because Richard's story is more even more strongly thematically charged. You could say Olive's story is thematically charged as well, but Richard's probably the greater in terms of transformation. And the film opens, if you remember, the film opens with Richard delivering his lecture to all of like 3 students, and that sets up his notion, his worldview in terms of winners and losers, and that's what Michael Arndt wants to talk about in this film. We're going to look at a very short snippet where that theme is briefly brought back in the context of the main plot. We're now talking about going to Redondo Beach, and Mother is trying to get that organized, and Richard is now the complicating factor, because his subplot doesn't gel with this intention of going to Redondo Beach.
Promise. Fly out and come back Monday.
And how are you going to get around out there?
We'll rent a car.
And stay at a hotel?
We can afford it.
Cheryl, this is our seed money.
Well, if I had a little help bringing it in,
don't
you know.
start that.
It all goes to your 9
I
steps.
told you I'm going to talk to Stan Grossman. We're going to be locked and loaded on this deal and start generating some income. But in the meantime, we've got to be...
Okay, we'll drive.
I'm not driving.
How are you going to fit Grandpa on the Miata?
Well, Grandpa does not have to come.
What? I coached her. I gave her the moves. I gotta go.
Why don't you take the VW?
I cannot drive a shift, Richard. I tried and I cannot do it. We'll fly there.
We can't afford it.
Well, that's what we're gonna do unless you have a better idea.
It's funny how even tense and emotionally charged scenes like this make me just happy because of the amazing writing that's going on here. Very elegantly, that subplot is woven into that main plot, and you have all the other characters with their own stories hanging around. Often, the subplot sets up the main plot or foreshadows it. We see an element that gives us a hint to what's coming. Right at the beginning of Back to the Future, there's one shot that contains at least 2 setups to later subplots. And here's a part of that shot. There's a shot before we realize that Doc Brown is not at home. All the machinery kicks into gear, and the food for the dog, for Einstein, is prepared, but the dog's not there either. So there's that subplot. Where's the dog? And then Marty comes in, and that will be his first concern. He's trying to get in touch with Doc Brown. But here you saw the plutonium. That will lead us into the main story. There's the subplot of the Iranians that will kickstart the main plot of the time travel. And then we see him turn on this amplifier. That leads into the music subplot, in which Marty is a guitarist who will invent rock and roll by playing at the school's music contest. So 2 subplots kicked into gear right there in the very early minutes of Back to the Future. If you want to know what this sex and the sub business means, well, it's all about relationship lines, romantic journeys, subplots that carry love stories. I mentioned In Bruges. In Bruges is a really good example because the main story of these 2 criminals being stuck in Bruges only really kicks in when the phone call comes in from Harry, which is past the half-hour mark, which is very, very late. And screenwriting teachers will tell you this will never work. In Bruges was successful. How did Martin McDonagh keep the action going? Well, he brought in a subplot earlier. He brought in Ray's story, a love story with the character of Chloe, that gave the film a certain structure, and it kept us going until that main plot kicked in. So just a very short clip. And I want you to also be aware that we see at some point, we see the dwarf. The dwarf comes back. You might ask, is that a subplot? We'll talk about it in a minute.
So on this scene, you're supposed to walk like a little tiny mouse, you know? Okay? Great.
Ray, come on, let's go. My arse, let's go. They're filming midgets. Oh my God. Look at that girl. She's gorgeous. Ray, we're going right now. Fuck off, are we? It's the best bit of Bruges so far. You and your buildings.
Ray has this thing with midgets. He also has a thing with kids because his wound is he killed a child. And collateral damage in one of his previous missions, a child died, and that became his psychological wound. And it comes back in the image of the dwarf. That will come back again at the end of the story. Is that a subplot? Possibly. Maybe it's more a motif. It's an image system rather than a story in its own right. What the love story does, what the sex and the sub does, it helps you structure a story. And when you have a story that is problematic in terms of its structure, you can use a romantic subplot to give the audience a clear point of anticipation. Everybody understands how love stories are structured. Everybody knows that paradigm of boy meets girl, boy loses girl, and so forth. That's exactly how you can organize a film that is otherwise problematic. I do believe that Groundhog Day works exactly on that premise, because the main plot of Phil Connors being stuck in the Groundhog Day in itself doesn't really provide any anticipation, any dramatic tension, because Phil doesn't have any tools or strategy to get out of that day, to get out of that loop. So we have the romantic subplot running to give the film structure. At the same time, it's also a vehicle to show the characters transformation. So he needs to learn to become a less self-centered person before he's released from his curse. And the subplot does exactly that. And we'll see that subplots do that most of the time, whether they are romantic or not. Often it shows in the nature of the relationship where our character is in their trajectory. You know, they can't really have a healthy relationship until they have sorted out their own issues. This is the start of that subplot. It hints at what the problem is that Phil Connors has. It sets up the theme, and we can anticipate where this is going.
You know, I think this is one of the traits of a really good producer. Keep the talent happy.
Anything I can do?
Would you help me with my pelvic tilt?
Within reason. Would you like to come to dinner with Larry and me?
No, thank you. I've seen Larry eat. You get your sleep. I'll see you in the morning.
Don't be late.
Did he actually call himself the talent?
So in this brief scene, the two elements of that subplot were set up. On the one hand, the romantic side and the thematic undercurrent of Phil needing to let go of his attitude. Maybe that's subtle. There are other films in which it's a little bit less subtle. The opening of Bridesmaids is a heavy, quite confronting sex scene that's not particularly enjoyed by our main character. And then in the morning, this happens.
Yeah, we're on the same page. I mean, I'm not looking for a relationship right now either. Let's just say that. Whatever you want to, I can do, I'd rather just, I like simple, not like other girls where I'm like, be my boyfriend. Unless you were like, yeah. And I'd be like, maybe. I don't want that either. Me neither.
This is so awkward. I really want you to leave, but I don't know how to say it without sounding like a dick.
Oh.
Wow, that's painful. So Bridesmaids is really about bridesmaids. It's about the wedding of her friend. But the undercurrent, the subplot, is about her own relationships and her self-esteem, her own self-image, and how she needs to change that if she wants to be happy and ultimately have a successful relationship herself. So again, set up really early, right at the beginning of the film. Subplots are, in that sense, the carrier of the theme. They signal to us the type of journey the characters need to go on, and that's expressed through that romantic subplot. Here's a quote from Ray Francham from the book I mentioned earlier. Subplots will carry and embody the message or theme of your screenplay. Usually they tell us what the story is really about. The same way Francham probably borrowed from McKee in terms of the relationships of the subplot to the main plot, he probably also borrowed from Linda Seeger, who says plot carries the action, but the subplot carries the theme. Ask writers why they wrote the script, they will probably start talking about the subplot. That's from Linda Seeger's book, Making a Good Script Great. Going to Inception. Inception is a great example of a film that has a romantic subplot that carries the theme. And it's probably less romantic than you might envisage at the beginning of the story, because when we are introduced to the subplot with the Mal character, it has a romantic undertone, which then later turns out to be much less romantic than we might have envisaged. So Inception, we see the main character of Dom Cobb with one of his partners in crime, and this is the first time the character of Mal appears, and this point we don't know who she is.
I can get it here, trust me. The information is in the safe. You looked right at it when I mentioned secrets. What's she doing now? Just head back to the room. All right, I'll take care of this.
Okay, make sure you do. We're here to work.
If I jumped, would I survive?
Clean dive, perhaps. Oh, what are you doing here?
Setup of the subplot, the main subplot in Inception the relationship between Mal and his wife, between Dom and his wife Mal. And if you were to study that subplot, which you should do, I mean, you should now also check your own favorite films on how these subplots work, because you're going to have to write them in your own script. If you see where this subplot is resolved, it is just before the third act climax. So your main character must resolve their issues. The subplot, a thematic subplot, must be resolved before they can go into the main plot. And the logic behind that is that psychological burden keeps the hero from being successful in their main plot. So, I'm going to give you a few more examples of subplots carrying theme because it's so important. It's so effective, and it is very common in hugely successful films. The next example is from a film I love, LA Confidential, with 2 Australian actors in the 3 key roles. We're going to look at the subplot with Russell Crowe's character. And the first clip we're going to watch is where he meets the woman who will help him transform and let go of his psychological burden.
Hiya, Nick. I need a delivery. A case each of gin, rum, scotch.
That sounds like a hell of a party, Lynn. I'll be right with you.
Here we know that Christmas will be green and bright, the sun to shine by day and all the stars at night. Melikilikimaka is a wise way to say Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas to you, officer.
We'll go straight to the midpoint reversal scene in which we go to the full depth of their relationship and how she is the catalyst, or she helps him transform and see what the issue is that he's confronted with. And literally in the dialogue, he will tell us what is holding him back. Remember what I said earlier, that the hero needs to first resolve their subplot conflict, their subplot obstacles before they can be successful in the main plot. And this is almost literally expressed in this scene at the midpoint reversal, where Russell Crowe's character has just slept with Kim Basinger's character.
Whoever killed Stenslin is still around. I know it in here. I know it. There's something wrong with the Night Owl. I just can't prove it, that's all. I'm not smart enough. Just the guy they bring in to scare the other guy shitless.
You're wrong. You found Patchett. You found me. You're smart enough.
Very important line of dialogue. In some films, it's fairly subtle until later in the film, whether it be the midpoint reversal or the end of Act 2. In other films, that theme is set up very early on, and we're being given a hint of the upcoming subplot to support that in the first few scenes of the film. Ratatouille is such a film.
Your only limit is your soul. What I say is true. Anyone can cook, but only the fearless can be great.
Pure poetry. But it was not to last. Gusteau's restaurant lost one of his 5 stars after a scathing review by France's top food critic, Anton Ego. It was a severe blow to Gusteau, and the broken-hearted chef died shortly afterwards, which, according to tradition, meant the loss of another star. Gusteau is dead?
Let's go back to Saving Private Ryan. We're now in the end of Act 2. This is the lowest point. It's the cave moment for our character. And one of the German soldiers just executed a few of his mates. And he's paralyzed. He can't do anything. And he just allows this soldier to pass by him without doing anything. We've seen the early moments of the second act of this subplot, and this are the final moments of the subplot, which means we're now the closest to this character's transformation. And in a minute, we'll see his final resolution, his resurrection, so to speak, in Hero's Journey terms. Going to television now, this is from the French Netflix show Lupin, which you can watch. There's a bit, I think, 4 or 5 or 6 episodes available. Interesting, this is a high-octane crime drama, almost, it has references of Guy Ritchie in terms of its style. But when we look at the subplot scenes, they look like we're watching a relationship drama.
Can I see Raoul this weekend?
Of course you can see Raoul this weekend. You think he's gonna want to see you? He's tired of being disappointed.
I know I'm not the ideal father.
Well, Saturday at 8?
Saturday at 8. Things will change, Claire.
Yeah, well, we'll see.
I'm gonna change.
Tell that to your son.
I know this is a bit late for the alimony.
Keep your money. Buy a present for Raoul.
When you hear the word change mentioned in dialogue, you can bet on it that there's a thematic statement. This character obviously has to change, and that's the subplot. In the main plot, he's a robber, and we see exciting scenes in which he is inspired by his hero of Arsène Lupin, which is a mythical French robber that he reads about. And he received a book from his dad. And then the story about his dad and the mystery about his dad's incrimination, because the dad was imprisoned, was wrongly imprisoned. That is an entire subplot playing out in the past. So in television, you will find there are numerous subplots, way more subplots than you will have in feature film, because you simply have more time to elaborate on them. In a feature film, you'll have about, 3 to 5 subplots on average. In television, there's really no limit to it. Yesterday I said, perhaps you can compare the amount of subplots you can have to the amount of data you have on your hard drive. It depends on the size of the hard drive. What's the memory of your viewers like? And over time, I think viewers are open to processing more and more information, and TV shows become more complex. And if you look at something like The Wire, the number of subplots there are sheer countless. There's literally dozens of them. That subplots are important, that they trigger the curiosity and the imagination of the audience is clear from this post on Reddit, going back 8 years, when in Breaking Bad there was the scene of Marie bringing a stolen item to the baby shower at Skylar's. And obviously the fans were intrigued. What's going on here? And this was setting up an important subplot that comes back several seasons later. You need to know your audience. You need to know how far you can push them in order to know how far you can space out those setups and payoffs within the same subplot. In order to understand subplots or to know which subplots are playing, as a student of the craft, a very easy way is to just look at the previously on. And you'll have almost a list of the subplots that are playing in the show and that will come back in this episode. So previously on is not a summary of what happened, because if you do a proper analysis of these short clips before your episode, you'll find that a lot of information is left out, often critical information. Often the entire A plot is left unmentioned. In The Americans, you'll see in preparation for episode 2, we're only reminded of certain elements of episode 1, and these are particularly relating to the subplots that will be playing in this episode.
Previously on The Americans.
Philip, I'd like you to meet Elizabeth. There is so much to talk about. Philip and Elizabeth's lives.
Not the other ones. Those should never be discussed.
Super secret spies living next door. They look like us. They speak better English than we do. They're not allowed to say a single word in Russian once they get here.
Oh, hi, you came. Just for a second to bring over brownies and welcome you to the neighborhood.
What do you do, Stan?
I'm an FBI agent.
Defecting to America?
America's not so bad. The electricity works all the time. Food's pretty great.
Is that what you care about?
No, I care about everything.
Not the motherland.
I do, but our family comes first.
So we have a list of the subplots that are playing here. And at the end, we have the final statement, which is probably the core subplot. It's the thematic subplot of the show, which is the conflict between Philip and Elizabeth, where Elizabeth believes that the motherland comes first. She's there for Mother Russia. Everything she does is to serve that. Philip is different. For Philip, family comes first. And that subversion of the gender prejudices is really interesting, that it's the father here who tells us family comes first. Number of subplots going on here. There's obviously each episode that has its own task, and you can say that is probably the main plot for the episode. The subplot then, the most important one that runs through the entire show, that's only resolved in the final episode of the multi-year show, is the one between the spies and the FBI agent who lives across the street. So that keeps the tension going for many, many years. And then, as you could see, there's lots of other things going on. If you would like to, without having to watch or rewatch all these episodes, you can just look at the season overviews wherever they're published, on fan pages or on Wikipedia or on IMDb. And for Fleabag, this is an example of the first episode. The main plots each has one paragraph on this page. And you'll see that each of the subplots here relates to a relationship, and that's often the case. If you want to know what are the subplots in a film or a TV episode, just look at the relationships your main character has, and then whether any stories unfold from that. In Fleabag, that's certainly the case. Most of the characters we meet here come back in this or subsequent episodes. First, she meets with the asshole guy, then the bus rodent, then ex-boyfriend Harry, the bank manager, Sister Claire. We see a customer at the cafe, and then we see a flashback with her girlfriend Boo. And then she meets her father and godmother, where she steals the sculpture. And only at the very end of the episode do we learn the main subplot of this show. That again runs over 2 seasons so far. And that's that of her best friend Boo, who got killed or accidentally killed herself. That is what drives her emotionally. And that will carry through every single episode of Fleabag. The A-plot, the core story in this episode, you can say, is maybe her relationships, but more than that, even her need to find money for her business. Her business is having a hard time, and she wants to borrow money from the bank, then tries with her sister. Each episode, many of these scenes go back to that A-plot, but the undercurrent is again one of self-esteem, and that is expressed in the relationships. Sometimes you do need to watch the episode, because this summary, to my opinion or impression, is probably a little bit thin for the second episode. Let's now go back to feature film and the act structure. We're now finally in our third act of Saving Private Ryan, or at least the resolution of our subplot in this climactic scene.
Ich kenne den Soldaten. Ich kenne den Mann. Dann haut die Schnauze. Abhängen. Haut ab. Verschwindet!
He's found the courage. Finally, he's done the right thing. And he uses his own strength now. He uses his knowledge of German. And this is his third act, his resurrection. Somewhat more uplifting although we stay with the Nazis, at least the soup Nazi. Subplots in television, we're going to analyze an entire episode of Seinfeld over the next 10 minutes. The 3 storylines from this particular episode go as follows. The main one, the one from the title, in which all our characters try to go buy soup from the soup Nazi, who is this character who doesn't simply give soup to everyone. You've got to follow his own rules or it's nothing. B story is about Elaine, who finds an armoire on the street and tries to get it to her flat. C story is about George, who's sick of seeing Jerry and Sheila cuddle and call each other schmoopy. These 3 storylines are all set up in the first scene in a very short period of time. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut up that first scene. I'm going to show you exactly where those storylines are being introduced. Here we go. This is the first one.
All right, so what theater you want to go to tonight? We got 61st and 3rd or 84th and Broadway.
Which one you want to go to, Schmoopy?
You call me Schmoopy. You're Schmoopy.
You're Schmoopy.
You're Schmoopy.
You're Schmoopy.
All right, Schmoopies. What's it going to be? Pick a theater.
Interestingly, it is storyline C that's set up first. It's the Schmoopy storyline. Going to the next segment of this particular scene.
We'll go to 3rd Avenue. So can you come with us for lunch to the soup place?
No, you have a good lunch. I'll meet you back here for the movie. Hey. Hi, Elaine. Hi, Sheila.
All right, then I'll see you later.
Bye, Schmoopy.
Bye, Schmoopy.
Okay. We ready to go?
Yes, please, let's go.
So we have a recap of the Schmoopy, but the soup place was mentioned as well. And we saw that glance between George and Elaine, which gave the Schmoopy idea a little bit more weight. So it's basically preparing the viewer that this will become a story.
Boy, I'm in the mood for a cheeseburger.
No, we gotta go to the soup place.
What soup place?
There's a soup stand. Kramer's been going there.
He's always raving. I finally got a chance to go there the other day, and I tell you this, you will be stunned.
Stunned by soup?
You can't eat this soup standing up, your knees buckle.
Huh? All right, let's go. Come on.
There's only one caveat. The guy who runs the place is a little temperamental, especially about the ordering procedure. He's secretly referred to as the soup Nazi.
Rising tension here. Now the soup place ID has gained priority. This is the storyline that's getting more and more screen time. And we're being prepared for that confrontation. We're being prepared for the scene in which we're going to see it happen. And then we go to that next scene where we recap the A storyline. And that's where the B storyline is going to be introduced as well.
No extraneous comments, no questions, no compliments.
Oh boy, I'm really scared.
Elaine!
All right, Jerry, it's enough now about the soup Nazi. Whoa! Wow, look at this. You know what this is? This is an antique armoire. Wow.
Let's have a look at the overall overview of this first act. The first act of this episode runs for 7 minutes. We saw that the C story was being set up first. Then the A story where they're practicing the rules. Then we go to the B story where she finds an armoire. Back to the A story. And now we keep alternating between the A story and either the B or the C story. And the first act climaxes in Elaine trying to buy soup. That scene, it is the climactic scene. It's the biggest scene. It's the longest scene. If we were to analyze that scene in particular, you'd see that runs in 3 acts. Or it actually starts at Jerry's flat. It's in three parts. So it's clear that this A story is the most important story. It gets the most screen time. And there's a reason, because that will ultimately also lead to the climax of the show. Act 2, again 7 minutes. We open with the B story. This is about the armoire. Back to the A story, and we alternate B, C. And then something really interesting happens. After having 2 scenes about the A story, we're now going to climax the second act by bringing the 2 storylines, A and B, together. And that happens in a scene with Kramer and the soup Nazi. Newman is there as well at the beginning. he leaves, and then this happens.
My friend is awfully disappointed is all. Now, she's very emotional.
Thank you.
Jambalaya.
All right, now listen to me. You have been a good friend. I have an armoire in my basement. If you want to pick it up, you're welcome to it. So, take it. It's yours.
How can I possibly thank you?
You are the only one who understands me.
And that is a twist. So end of Act 2, we have a twist where the A and B story are now intersecting, and that gives a very interesting complication and a very powerful complication that then will have another payoff in the third act. How do you keep track of all this? I've shown you that you could use Excel to keep track of your storylines and your character journeys, and this is exactly how Ray Frensham put it in his book. Interestingly, it looks kind of similar to what Dr. George Miller does with his story map. His story maps run the other way around. It has the scenes on the rows, and it has the characters in the columns. So here we have the characters in the rows, and then we have the story points vertically. When you're going to list an entire film, which I think you could do and you should do to keep track of it, it's probably going to be easier if you're oriented horizontally, or rather vertically. Otherwise, you have to scroll horizontally. I guess it's up to your own taste. But here you see, this is an example from Tootsie. These are the 5 subplots of Tootsie laid out in this grid. Now we're going to Act 3 from this episode of Seinfeld. 7 minutes again, opens with the C story. Then the combined A-B story. Back to C, A-B. And then there's a scene just about the armoire when Kramer and Jerry see the armoire guys, and then both Kramer and Jerry run. Now, this is probably the weakest scene. Why? Because the B story has already been escalated to a combined A and B story. So when you then go back to just B, it doesn't have the same power. Here's another twist. Jerry finds recipes in the drawer of this armoire, and Elaine starts brooding. Then we go to the C story again, and now we have the climax of the episode, in which Elaine goes to the soup Nazi for revenge. And that climax looks like this.
5 cups chopped porcini mushrooms, half a cup of olive oil, 3 pounds celery.
That is my recipe for wild mushroom.
Yeah, that's right. I got 'em all. Cold cucumber, corn and crab chowder, mulligatawny.
Mulligatawny?
You're through, soup Nazi. Back it up. No more soup for you.
That's it for today. I hope you enjoyed it. And if you did, please give us a like, or even better, subscribe to the channel. That means that each time we publish new free content here, you will be notified. Click that bell button and join the bunch. If you want to attend our masterclasses live and have the ability to ask questions, have a look at the information below the video, the text box there, and you may be able to enroll for our next series of masterclasses. We also have an online screenwriting course called Immersion that might interest you, and more details you can find at the same spot. I hope you enjoyed today's class, and I'm hoping to see you for the next one. See you then. Bye.